Man, I have to tell you, as we go through this little book of Ruth, it's become like this big thing in my mind that's occupying a lot of space. I'm finding it really challenging. I don't know about you, but it's opening some things up that I think are really important to open up. One of the things that I think it opens up for us today is what would happen if we took a risk? What would happen? Would something good happen if we took a risk? What could happen? Would something bad happen if we took a risk? What could happen? And the reason I think this is an interesting question that the book of Ruth raises today is I just wonder if we as followers of Jesus have been practicing playing it safe. And we answer the question of what would happen if we took a risk by saying something bad would probably happen if we took a risk. See, I wonder if sometimes, especially in the church in North America, we just get comfortable and we become risk adverse. Why risk? We have all we need. And I wonder if we become comfortable and secure and focused on what bad could happen if we took a risk. What could happen? What could happen if you enter into relationships that are uncomfortable? Something bad or something good? What could happen, like in the book of Ruth, if you read the law and interpret it in a generous way? Something bad? Something good? What would happen? It's easy to ask this question and by default think something bad is going to happen. And I think this book calls us to courage. I think it's a book that says, be a people of courage and don't play it safe. A few years ago, there was a speech made at the University of Texas by this guy named Admiral McRaven. It was called Make Your Bed. And it was a speech given to a big graduating class at the University of Texas. And I think the whole class, as college grads do when they're about to leave, were asking, what is going to happen? What's going to happen when I leave school? Something good? Something bad? Do I play it safe? So this guy knew a bit about this because he was a guy that took raw recruits and turned them into Navy SEALs. Something good can happen with that, and something bad can happen with that. So he gave advice about small things to change the world. And you've probably guessed the first piece of advice, okay? Make your bed. If you make your bed in the morning, it's the first thing you've done. You set a positive intention to do something, and it's practice for discipline. There were 9 others, and one caught my eye. It was this. If you want to change the world, you need to take a risk. That really resonated with me as we go through the book of Ruth, because doing good things, important things, reaching out and loving people in big or small ways always involves some kind of risk. You ever love someone? It involves some kind of risk. If you want to change the world, you need to take a risk. As we go through Ruth, I think we need to listen carefully because there's a message we need to hear. The type of love that God changed the world with in Jesus is a love that was willing to take a risk. It was not playing it safe. And the message from Ruth for us means being a follower of Jesus means taking a risk. The whole book of Ruth is full of risk. Not risque, it's risky. It's a risky book. It's motivated by love, this risk. It's not risk for self-advancement. It's not risk for self-improvement. It's not risk for self-fulfillment. It's risk for others. It's risk for someone else. There's a specific type of love that Ruth is focused on, just hones in on this love. It's called hesed. It's translated as kindness, and I think it's a really weak translation of this love because it takes a whole book to describe this type of love. And it's calling us to something. It's so important, it takes a whole book to show what it is. Hesed is a love that is loyal and selfless, and it motivates a person to do things for other people and take a risk. And that love is the central theme of the book of Ruth. And small actions done with hesed lead to big things that can change the world. And that happens in this book. If you want to change the world for good, Ruth is telling us, and even just the smallest, most humble way, you need to take a risk. So today we're moving into chapter 3, and a lot has happened in the previous 2 chapters. Very much has happened. We see a family that's moved from Bethlehem to Moab, back to Bethlehem. From famine to refugee status, back to harvest. We see incredible loss, lifetimes of loss in 5 verses, death and suffering. And we see people who are vulnerable and on the margins. Ruth and Naomi are on the margins. They don't have a lot of agency. They don't have power. They're lowest in the social structure. And that love, hesed, the whole book is an explanation of that. So today we're moving into chapter 3, and we need to catch these 2 laws. These are pivotal things for the book of Ruth. These laws, everything revolves around this. The kinsman redeemer law and the Levirate law. I want to explain these a bit. This is very important. The Levirate law says this. If dad dies, husband dies, the brother marries the widow to produce offspring for the family. That is his duty because descendants were so important. The future, the hope. That was what they did. Their society was structured around this. So, that's the Levirate law. An immediate family member does this. The kinsman redeemer law is a separate law. It's not the same law. Kinsman redeemer law is that if you have lost some land because of poverty or whatever reason and sold it, it could be bought back by a male relative and returned to your family. This book revolves around those 2 laws. They put all the tension in this book. And hear this carefully. There is a right way to interpret these laws. There is a correct way to do it. It's how you would do it if you're a lawyer or going by the book or a scribe. You follow the rules. Let's call it the letter of the law. That's how you follow it. It's what should be expected. It's the obligations. It's clarity. It's in policy. This is how you do it. There is another way. It's called the spirit of the law. It's discerning the intent behind the law. And it's the way that captures God's heart and shows God's heart for his people Israel in this book and for us today. And what the book of Ruth wants to open up for us and how God loves us and how we should love others beyond what's simply required. So this is the thing. This book is not well, it is. It is a bit. It's not a fuzzy love story, but a bit. Okay, I like that part. Don't want to totally dismantle that. But not primarily a fuzzy love story. It's about taking a risk and showing the heart of God in our heart for others. And I really feel, as I've been reading this, that we need to pay attention because I think we can get used to playing it safe. Here's what I think about taking a risk. When you live on the margins and you've got nothing left to eat and no power or agency, the law, the letter of the law, looks different. It does not work for you. Naomi and Ruth, like so many others today and then who live on the edges, on the margins, who are powerless or other or outsider or unwelcome, they are on the hungry side of the law. And when you're hungry, the law looks different. The hungry side of the law isn't worried about what bad might happen. The hungry side of the law is what would happen if? What good might happen? Maybe I can eat. The spirit of the law says the rules are about people, not people about the rules. That's the spirit of the law. So we see hesed in action, and we're going to start with Naomi in Ruth chapter 3. And she takes these amazing actions and creates a plan. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be provided for." Now Boaz, whose woman you have worked with, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor. It's a bit cloak and dagger, isn't it? It's quite the plan. Got to think this through. And even though she is deep in grief, Naomi is thinking about Ruth. How can I help my daughter-in-law? How can I help her survive? Put food on the table in this world where we have nothing. So she creates a plan. And I want to make this clear. This plan is not so she can set herself up. This is for Ruth. It's a plan of hesed for Ruth, not for Naomi. Maybe Boaz will take pity on Ruth. Maybe he'll take her as a wife. Now, it might not sound like taking a risk, but let me explain why it is taking a risk. It depends on Boaz's goodwill. You're like, okay, well, obviously he saw her in the fields. He's just smitten. Something we miss, and I apologize again in advance for Hallmark Ruth fans like myself. I'm going to put something in your mind that will ever change how you read the book of Ruth. I apologize, but it's important because we don't understand the risk involved until we hear this. Boaz was not holding out for a soulmate. Boaz was not pining for Ruth. Boaz was not hiding behind the wheat, checking Ruth out as she harvested. Boaz did not need to get married. We don't know much about Boaz, but here's the thing. It is very doubtful he was a bachelor. We have this modern Western idea that he must have been the town's most eligible bachelor. He's 50 and he's single. He was even on the show The Bachelor the whole season. He's dashing, he's handsome, he's rich, he's powerful. He's a war hero. And wait for it, he's single. The last contestant is Ruth. That is not the world of Israel. It would be shameful for older men like Boaz to be holding out for a soulmate and not care about his family. Just aging and aging till the right one came along, like we do in North America, I guess, or maybe we don't. I don't know. He was probably married with sons. Maybe with multiple wives. Or maybe he was a widower with children. The idea of a bachelor waiting for love does not exist in this world. I am sorry. So that adds to the story, though, doesn't it? You understand the risk. He could say no. It makes the story better. It's not the desperate man with his eye on Ruth just waiting for her, hoping she's going to come flirt with him. We're supposed to read this and not know what's going to happen because he doesn't need her. And what is happening is very risky. So, she's given these instructions. Get on your best clothing. Hint, discard your widow's clothing. Take off the black. Put on something nice. It's a signal that you're now available. Take it off and put this dress on. Have a bath. Well, probably didn't need to say that. Anyway, and go to the threshing floor and know that this is the harvest season. This is the end of the year, and remember, they haven't had a harvest for a long time. There have been famines, so this is a big party on the threshing floor. This happened at the end of the harvest, and think Oktoberfest on a threshing floor. It's not that comfortable. Wait till he is full of food and drink and asleep. This is a wild party that she's going to. And they are celebrating. So she approaches Boaz. He's full of food and drink, and maybe just slightly more wine than was technically necessary. And she's to uncover his feet. And there's no need to say anything. Naomi says, he'll know what to do. Just uncover his feet. Ruth says, whatever you say, I will do. This is what Ruth does. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly and covered his feet and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I am your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are the guardian redeemer of our family. You notice something? She doesn't do what Naomi told her to do. She didn't go all meek and mild and say nothing. She instructs him. This person who's on the lowest, the very margins, instructs this powerful man, Boaz, spread the garment of your cloak over me, since you are my family's kinsman redeemer. Okay, so this is what she's doing. It is so far beyond what's acceptable, Naomi never would have imagined this. She's combining the two laws, kinsman redeemer and Levirate law, together into one law. And she says, do it this way. It is very forward and very assertive. And her application of the law did not have to be followed. It was incorrect technically. It was not the letter of the law. Boaz is not the nearest relative, not of Naomi, and certainly not of this pagan Moabite girl attached to his relative Naomi. He is not required to do this, to redeem her, to provide offspring, according to the Levirate law. He's not the one. He's not required to redeem the land. He's not the right one. You know, this is what hesed looks like. It is going above and beyond what's required, and Ruth took an amazing risk putting herself out there for her mother-in-law to create offspring and hope for that family. This is what Ruth did. She put herself out there, and it was bold. Now, I want to imagine this from Boaz's perspective as well. He's deep in a contented slumber, full of food and gratitude. And he wakes up because his feet are getting cold. Have you ever done that? Yeah, I hate it when my sheets get untucked. I like to be swaddled. I hate it when my feet come out the end of the bed and they get cold when I'm trying to sleep. It wakes me up every time. This happened to Boaz. His feet got uncovered. And he wakes up. He's kind of like, and who are you? Who are you? In the dark, he's woken from his sleep. He doesn't know if he's dreaming or what it is, but anyway, he's up now. And this is what happens. She says, it's me, Ruth. And then he goes, "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another one who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." There's a lot of tension here. How will he respond? Imagine if you were a Jewish person hearing this story for the first time. How will he respond? This is not going to end well. This is what they would anticipate, I think. I'm actually not your kinsman redeemer. You've woken up the wrong man. He's in the other threshing floor. So maybe you should go over there. I'm not that person. I'm not bound to produce offspring for you. And if I was, Naomi's too old and you're not related to Naomi. So, wrong person. But Boaz responds with this risk-taking hesed that the book is all about. It's the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. He goes right past that, bypasses it all, and recognizes that Ruth is interpreting the law correctly in this hesed way of love that recognizes the need and sees people over the letter of the law. And it's risky for him because Ruth is a foreigner. She's a pagan. There's no gain for him. There's no power. There's nothing added for him. And why did he do this? I think in that moment, when he saw Ruth and heard her request, he saw God's hesed in her. It revealed something and saw the right thing to do. Hesed is love that goes above and beyond, that is not deserved and is willing to take a risk. Naomi, Ruth, Boaz all take a risk because that's what hesed looks like. That's what God's love looks like. It goes above and beyond. And this is showing us what God's love is like. Love God like this. Go beyond the lines and love others like this. This is what it means to follow me. And I think the book of Ruth forces an issue, invites us to ask something. Have we become used to playing it safe? Who will we associate with? I mean, Jesus was really notorious for associating with the wrong people. He took a risk. He was with the tax collectors all the time. How do we love people? How do we welcome people? Who do we welcome? Are we willing to risk, or do we want to play it safe? I think Ruth is calling us to something, to be a people of courage and to take a risk in loving others the way Jesus loves us. Because Jesus did not play it safe with us and was poured out way more than was needed. His love is lavish. It's a hesed love. And the gospel is a gospel of hesed, love that goes beyond the minimum. The love of the gospel is a love that takes a risk. And I think the book of Ruth asks us this: what if something good will happen? What if? This little story I want to tell you about my life in Edmonton a little bit. And I wanted to tell a story, I don't know why, but something that was maybe a bit derogatory of myself, because that's what we Canadians do. But I had lots of those, but this one isn't quite derogatory, so you have to forgive me for that. I hope it doesn't make me look too good. It's a big concern. There was a gym I used to go to in Edmonton, and I loved going to this gym, and I used to do what was called Olympic lifting. And it's kind of an odd style of lifting. We have these shoes that we wear that have straps, and they got wooden platforms, and you can tell. If you know what you're looking for, you can tell. This is Olympic lifting. This is weird. One day I was in the gym, and someone was watching me. I'd never seen this person before. He was just watching, and he came up, and he pointed to the weights. Then he pointed to my shoes. Like, this is just kind of weird. And I tried to talk to him, but he didn't speak in English. He only spoke Arabic. So we started gesturing back and forth, and he got the weights, and he lifted them, and I said, well done. Ugh. And he did it, and he grunted too, because we couldn't say anything in words. And we just started enjoying each other's company. There's another person in the gym that came over, and he saw us interacting, and this person actually spoke Arabic and came over and introduced us. Kevin, this is Muhammad. I learned Muhammad's story a bit. See, Muhammad was from Iraq, and Muhammad was in Canada as a refugee, and he had been on the Iraqi weightlifting team. So he saw my shoes, and he's like, cool, I'm going to do this. So we started hanging out together a bit and doing this weightlifting together. And we would go to the gym, and he wouldn't speak any English. I wouldn't speak any Arabic, obviously. And we would try to work out. It was just really, really fun. It got to a point, actually, where he couldn't afford shoes, but he had the same size feet. So we would swap shoes, too, to make it look even a bit more strange, because he needed those shoes to lift the weights. So we'd be there swapping shoes. Ended up that I got to know him a bit, and he invited me over to his house. It was an apartment where a lot of refugees lived. Walked into the apartment, there were about 10 other Iraqi men. None of them spoke English, and it was quite an experience to be the odd person. But I did feel welcome. And we had him over for dinner, and he came with a friend who was a translator for him and told his story a bit about Muhammad fleeing Iraq, showed the bullet hole he had in his back, and that his brother was disabled, and they came to Canada, and Muhammad took care of his brother. Anyway, we kept working out together and swapping shoes and swapping nods and swapping grunts and swapping weights as we lifted. It ended up being so that I actually just gave him those shoes because he needed them. And it was a small thing that I did. And I didn't really know what effect that might have. As you know, we moved away from Edmonton to Kelowna. And I lost touch with Muhammad. Have you ever gone on Facebook and searched for Muhammad? I can't find him. I don't know what happened with my shoes, but I do know that I took a small risk. Just a small risk. It was a small thing, and I wonder what happened. I wonder what happens when he looks at those shoes. I wonder if he remembers a Christian person that welcomed him. I have that hope. What if something good happened because of that? I feel like that is a small example of hesed that I wish and I offer. I wish I had more of those stories to share with you. A story about a little bit of risk that I took. But those things of hesed are things that bubble up inside you. They're organic. And you respond. You don't go, what does the law say I should do? No, there's regulations about swapping shoes. You need to spray them. I know that because of bowling alleys. You need to spray them first before you swap shoes. Hesed bubbles up inside you, and you're motivated by love to pour out for others. It's organic, and I think it's like yeast. It can grow into something bigger and more and amazing. And in my experience, when you love someone, you really put yourself out there. It's a vulnerable thing. And I think Ruth is saying, if you want to change the world for good, even in the most small, humble way, you need to take a risk. Anytime you feel like you're called to help someone, you need to take a bit of a risk. You want to walk with the homeless community? They're probably going to be rude to you, and it might take something of you. There's a risk. You want to walk with people that make you uncomfortable and be in relationships that cause you to grow? It's a risk, and it's going to take something. When you want to do something good, there's risk involved, and we have to be willing to take a risk. I think it's loving God and loving others. This is hesed. This is stepping out and valuing the spirit of the law over the letter of the law. It's loving others and going beyond the margins. It means taking a risk. So Ruth makes me wonder. I wonder what would happen if we took a risk. I wonder what would happen if you asked, what is God doing here? What good could happen for me loving this way? What if something good happens when I take a risk? Not what bad could happen. What if something good happens by being overabundant to my expression of love for people? So this is the invitation of Ruth. May your hesed love bubble up inside you. May it rise like yeast and grow. May your hesed love cause you to step into people's lives and put yourself out there for others. God's love is lavish and big, and he invites us to step into the margins in an overabundance and risk-taking love. Thanks be to God.